MTG Munster, your place for Commander games every Monday and Thursday. Goblin approved.
Hey gang, using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCGPLAYER. And if you'd like to join the generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. Today's game is another match from Magic Fest Montreal. And we have 2 new friends and 2 old friends joining us for this game. First up, Nick from Ottawa is playing his Chandra deck, keeping 3 mountains, Volcanic Offering, Wheel of Fortune, Magus of the Wheel, and Furnace of Wrath. You know him, you love him, Vincent is playing his Taigam deck, keeping a Soul Ring, River of Tears, Myriad Landscape, an Island, Grave Titan, Narset's Reversal, and Army of the Damned. Chris, who I know through proxy from Roxy, is playing Omnath, and he keeps a Misty Rainforest, Exploration, Sylvan Scrying, Stomping Ground, Growth Spiral, Forest, and Ramunak Excavator. And hailing from New Jersey, we have Faye playing Chainer. Faye keeps 2 mountains, 2 swamps, Gateway Plaza, Rupture Spire, and a Tragic Slip. Chris wins the die roll and starts us off. Chris plays a forest and casts Exploration. This lets him play his second land, a tap Stomping Ground. Nick plays a mountain. Vincent plays a Myriad Landscape. Faye plays a mountain. Chris plays a Wooded Foothills, taking 1 to go and find a basic forest. He then casts Ramunak Excavator, and he replays the Wooded Foothills, taking 1 to sacrifice it for a land, and passes. Nick plays a tap Myriad Landscape, and passes. Vincent plays a River of Tears, and casts his Soul Ring. He passes, cracking his Landscape. Faye plays a Gateway Plaza, paying the 1 for it with the mountain as it comes in. Chris plays Omnath in his main phase, who comes in and deals 1 to Vincent with the ETB trigger. Chris then plays a Misty Rainforest, giving Omnath a +1/+1 counter from its pseudo landfall ability. He cracks the Misty and shortcuts, playing it again, and cracking it again to find 2 lands, and gives Omnath 2 more counters. Nick plays a mountain and passes, cracking his landscape this time. Vincent plays an island and passes. Faye plays a tapped Rupture Spire, paying the 1 as it enters. Chris plays a Yavimaya Coast and gives Omnath a counter. We then see Growth Spiral drawing Chris a card and letting him play yet another land, a Polluted Delta, giving Omnath another counter, but this time also drawing him a card for having 8 or more lands. We then see Sylvan Scrying, and this finds Chris the now standard banned Field of the Dead. And he plays it, which nets him a zombie token, and another trigger from Omnath, giving it a +1/+1 counter and drawing him a card. Chris then moves to combat, and still focusing on Vincent, hits him for 8 commander damage. Nick plays a mountain and taps out for Volcanic Offering. Vincent, offering to help out, uses Narset's Reversal to copy the spell and return it to Nick's hand to save for later. Vincent uses his copy and targets the field and excavator, and has Nick pick the other targets. Responding to the targets though, Chris sacrifices his Delta for a snow-covered island, which comes in and gives Omnath another counter, Chris another draw, and Chris another zombie token. Nick then picks a zombie token and Breeding Pool. With the creatures dying, Faye uses Tragic Slip to take Omnath out. Go team! Nick then passes. Vincent plays an isolated Watchtower before casting Lord of the Accursed, and then another zombie buddy in a Corpse Augur. Faye plays a Swamp for turn, and taps out for Chainer. Chris pays 3 mana for a Springbloom Druid, sacrificing a forest to go and find 2 more basics. Chris then plays a Blighted Woodland, and casts Farseek before passing and searching. Nick plays a mountain and casts Hedron Archive. The Archive then helps to pay for Chandra, Fire of Kaldesh, before he passes to Vincent. Vincent asks to see Chris's yard, and he isn't as interested as he thought he'd be. He then brings out Taigam and heads to his fast attack, swinging the Corpse Augur, who is a 5-3 at Faye. Faye opts to take the hit, and Vincent passes. Faye plays another Swamp and pays 3 red for Ball Lightning. It gets some revenge for Faye by hitting Vincent for 6, and Faye passes, saying goodbye to the Ball Lightning and sacrificing it at the end of turn. For Chris's turn, he plays a Sylvan Library in his main phase and cracks his Blighted Woodland to find 2 basics. He then passes. Nick plays a Mountain and taps Chandra to deal 1 to Chris. Mag gives the wheel and hits the stack, and Chandra untaps, and Nick passes to Vincent. Vincent skips his draw step and uses Taigam's triggered ability, looking into the top 3 and keeping 1 of them for his hand and binning the rest. He puts to yard Decree of Pain and Grey Merchant, which really has me wondering what he keeps. 6 mana is tapped for a Grave Titan, which gives Vincent 2 zombie tokens as it enters. He then plays a tapped Dimir Aqueduct and bounces a land back to his hand. Faye's turn sees an Antuku Husk hitting the field, and has Faye discarding a mountain to recast the Ball Lightning with Chainer's ability. The Ball Lightning goes at Chris for 6 this time. Faye then passes and sacrifices the Ball Lightning at end of turn. Chris uses his library trigger to look at 2 more cards, but doesn't keep any extras. He then recasts Omnath, who comes in and deals 1 to Nick with its Enter the Battlefield trigger. Chris then passes. At the end of turn, Nick casts Volcanic Offering again, and this time picks Vincent's Dimir Aqueduct and Grave Titan, having Chris pick the other 2 targets. Nick also realizes with the Chandra and Tap trigger on the stack, he can deal 1 to Chris, which he does. Chris targets the Aqueduct as well, to not be totally rude, and also targets Taigam. Vincent is ready though, with a timely Swan Song. Nick deals 1 to Vincent, and casts Furnace of Wrath, untapping Chandra. He then taps her again, dealing 2 more damage to Vincent, which lets Nick transform her into Chandra Roaring Flame. Nick then upticks his Walker to deal 2 damage to Vincent, which is doubled by the Furnace's static ability. Nick then casts a Wheel of Fortune, and with the spell in the stack, Chris uses Mystical Tutor to find and put on top of his library a Worldly Tutor. Nick then plays a Care Keep as his land for turn, and casts a Mind Stone before passing. Vincent plays a Command Tower and heads to combat. He swings the Titan at Chandra, which Nick blocks with the Bird, and Vincent also gains 2 more zombie tokens from swinging, but with nothing else, he passes. Faye plays a Soul Ring and pays 3 for an Audacious Thief, and discards Shenanigans, which lets Faye pay for 3 to bring back the Ball Lightning once more. Faye then swings the Lightning at Chris, who blocks some of it. Faye then passes, and at the end of turn, Chris casts his Worldly Tutor. He finds Perforos and puts it on top. Chris draws his Perforos along with 2 other cards from the library activated ability. He takes 4 damage to keep an extra card, putting only 1 back. Chris then casts Perforos, and with the spell in the stack, Vincent wishes he still had the Swan Song. Chris then follows up with a Flame Harbinger, which has Perforos deal 2 to his opponents, which actually becomes 4 thanks to the Furnace, and Chris goes to search for an Elemental. Chris grabs an Avenger of Zendikar and puts it on top. Chris then plays a Forest, getting an Omnath trigger, and putting a +1/+1 counter on his commander, but more importantly, drawing him a card. Chris then has exactly enough mana to cast the Avenger, which prompts Vincent to use Mission Briefing. He surveils 2, keeping 1 on top of his library and binning another. And he gives flashback to Memory Plunder from his yard thanks to the briefing. This in turn lets him cast Chris's Chaos Warp from his graveyard, and he targets Perforos. Chris shuffles Perforos into his library, with Nick and Vincent both cutting to hopefully make sure Perforos isn't the top card. Chris reveals a Cyclonic Rift, which is sad, and the Avenger resolves without dealing any damage. It makes 12 tokens, who also don't deal any damage. Chris then plays a Kessig Wolf Run, giving Omnath the counter and drawing from Omnath's essential landfall trigger. He also gets an Avenger of Zendikar landfall trigger, pumping his plant tokens with a +1/+1 counter each. Chris passes, and at the end of turn, Nick activates the Magus of the Wheel. With a fresh 7, Nick draws for turn and plays a Mountain. He casts Red Sun Zenith where X is 8 on the Avenger of Zendikar, and holding priority, he then casts Arc Bond on said Avenger. Because of the doubling nature of the Furnace of Wrath, the 8 damage from the Red Sun Zenith becomes 16. This means that the Avenger of Zendikar is then going to deal 16 damage to all creatures and opponents, which is actually doubled, meaning 32. Nick has done the math right, and this is just enough to take out all of Nick's opponents, while at the same time, letting him live. Game review time. This was a particularly strong showing for Omnath, and it's great to see the new commander doing so much work for Elemental Tribal. I think his landfall ability is very powerful, not to mention the fact that he comes in and deals damage to any target as well. I'd built him as a Brawl commander, and he's fantastic, so I can only imagine he'd be even better with access to all the elementals throughout the years. Vincent's Taigam deck is actually a zombie deck, and he uses the ability on Taigam to basically help fill up his graveyard, as well as be selective with his draw. I love Memory Plunder, and using Missions Briefing to find the answer in someone else's graveyard and cast it is fantastic. I think Faye unfortunately struggled with a bit of a slow start with all of those tap lands coming in. The Ball Lightning was pretty sweet tech though, and swinging for 6 every turn wasn't too shabby. Nick's win came out of nowhere, as at the time I'd actually wandered away to talk to someone, and I came back 2 minutes later and the game was over. The interaction between Arc Bond and Furnace of Wrath is hilarious, and I thought the win was beautifully executed. It's one of those wins where everything lined up perfectly, and he had just enough mana and just enough life to make it work. If he'd been lower on either of them, it couldn't have happened, so it was great to see Nick go off. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.